Hello everybody, Raven Knight here. So the lore of For Honor has gone down a very interesting road. It's clear that the developers are wanting very badly to involve new places, new cultures, and new warriors to expand the world of For Honor, and I can't really fault them for wanting to do this. As I've said in previous videos, this is probably the best thing they could possibly do to keep the lore going. However, as we near the third season of this year, knowing it's going to focus highly on the Wu Lin, I can't help but feel that this is long overdue. Today I want to talk briefly about the Wu Lin and the missed opportunity from the developers. So, a little bit of background. The Wu Lin were released into For Honor with the Marching Fire expansion in the second year of For Honor. According to the lore, the cataclysm rocked China to the core and it caused a massive civil war among the warlords of China. The victorious warlord was the ruler of a faction called the Wu Lin, and that warlord became the new emperor of China as a result. But China, by this time, had become nothing more than a wasteland, so they traveled away from China to seek new lands to call home. The emperor of China at that time, Gao Lei, discovered Heathmoor and launched an invasion into their lands. The initial invasion was such a surprise to the people of Heathmoor that the Wu Lin gained a permanent foothold in the country before the three factions could do anything in response. Thus, they established a checkpoint fortress known as Chang Pass to secure the Wu Lin's entryway into Heathmoor. However, the Wu Lin had been unable to establish further inland than the fortress, as the Vikings, knights, and samurai have become more aware of their presence and have worked to hold them back. In short, the Wu Lin are an ever-present threat, but have yet to actually make headway into Heathmoor. In Year 3, Season 4, known as Sunda, we were introduced to the chief alchemists and harbingers of the Wu Lin, the Zhanhu, whose experiments and research helped Horkos begin their work on perfecting Draconite as a weapon. But other than that, the lore for the Wu Lin has been incredibly sparse and almost non-existent. Despite Viking lovers complaining that Ubisoft hates the Vikings since they haven't gotten a new hero since Jormungandr, and the Knights meanwhile got 2 new heroes and the Samurai got 1, and finally the Outlanders showed up, I feel like the Wu Lin have been the unfortunate forgotten child of Ubisoft far more than the Vikings, seeing as the Vikings at the very least have 7 warriors, whereas the Wu Lin didn't even get pirate and are stuck with just 5 warriors. But why were they abandoned? Why did Ubisoft not give more time and energy to the Wu Lin after their arrival? There are a plethora of reasons for why, but the biggest one was probably the community backlash. At the time of Marching Fire, the game was in a bad state, with poor balancing and player bases being generally dissatisfied with the priorities of the creators. When Marching Fire released, it promised no real balancing updates, the new faction was locked behind a large paywall, and the only good thing many people saw coming was the arrival of a new game mode, Breach. To put it simply, the community was upset that Ubisoft was giving the community more content without any fixes to help the state of the game. It came off as more greed-based than anything, and thus people lashed back at the decision. Now, luckily, the developers have started putting far more concern into fixing the game, and I am glad to say that the game right now is in a better place than it has ever been before. So the question must be asked, why has nothing else been done with the Wu Lin as of late? Is there a reason why? I can't say I know the exact reason why, but I do have a few theories, and the most likely one is that they, quote, left a bad taste in the mouth of the developers. See, okay, let me give you an example. When I was a kid, I ate a bad meal of seafood, and I got sick. And ever since, I never wanted to eat seafood again because I associated the seafood with being sick, and it took a long time to work up the courage to try it again. And I think that the Wu Lin caused something similar. While the Wu Lin themselves may not have been the direct cause of the backlash to Marching Fire, the developers couldn't help but associate the Wu Lin with the backlash. And if you read some of the comments and statements from folks online, yeah, the community seems to share that sentiment. Lots of people have been very hateful and harsh to the Wu Lin in the community, and I find it rather petty, to be honest. I actually got into a long argument with someone who said that the Wu Lin ruined the game and that anyone who plays them is objectively stupid. I tried to argue against that, but it was a waste of effort. So it's clear that there are several people within the community who just hate the Wu Lin. And I think it has I think that's in large part due to the Marching Fire expansion and the backlash. But the fact is that regardless of how the Wu Lin were introduced, it's a shame to leave them behind or to look away from them. The Wu Lin had, and still have, the potential to shake the lore of For Honor. Let's consider a few things. Despite not having a permanent settlement or territory in Heathmoor, they still are capable of infiltrating into all 3 lands, moving quickly and decisively from battle to battle. Their numbers never seem to diminish, and they have an impenetrable forces straight back to their homeland. So that begs the question, just how large is the Wu Lin? How vast are they? What resources do they have at their disposal? What relics do they have hidden away? How strong is this Eastern Dragon that just beyond Heathmoor that we've been ignoring for so long? The very idea of a massive empire just beyond the borders of Heathmore is a great idea to add game modes, lore, and characters. Like, not only lore, but China has a long and proud history of warfare and martial arts. The different weapons of China yet to be touched could create many, many new warriors to add to the Wu Lin's roster. For example, I've been campaigning for a while to get a warrior with a Jian Scholar sword. But beyond that, there's also the meteor hammers, the chain whip, the deer horn knives, even steel fans. For Honor even used fans as an execution tool as a universal execution not too long ago. Imagine the variety of warriors you could employ just from these weapons alone. Dual-wielding meteor hammers, a chain whip introducing a whip-like weapon to the game, and the Xian is one of the most famous Hollywood swords outside of the katana. Why didn't we get that for a Wu Lin Vanguard? As someone who has found great enjoyment in researching Asian history and culture, I can't begin to understand why China would not fascinate the mind of anyone playing a historical fighting game. But let's ignore the amount of heroes you could take from the Wu Lin. Let's ignore the heroes, okay? Let's take that aside for a second. What about the lore possibilities? I don't know exactly what next season holds, but I can already guess a little bit of what's coming. From the current lore orders, it seems that Astria, the leader of Horkos, wants to use the gold stolen from the Aztecs to fund a war effort in Wu Lin territory. Now you might think I'm going to say, oh, I'm so sick of this, but actually, I'm excited. I actually think this is a good idea because of the potential. There is one major difference between Astria launching a war in the Wu Lin territory than with the Aztecs, the Arabians, and the Egyptians. Because unlike the Aztecs, Arabians, and Egyptians that we've seen so far, the Wu Lin are not a peaceful, loving, kind, tree-hugging empire. We know that they are warriors. They have blood on their hands. They have crushed rivals and enemies who stood in their way, and now they have their eyes set on conquest. Unlike the Aztecs, who they said it were a peaceful empire who gave up their human sacrificing and didn't have any real problems with anyone until Horkos came by, or the Arabians who naively let Horkos walk in even though they always saw the future and were always able to avoid catastrophe. Unlike them, we know the Wu Lin are warriors. We know that they're a powerful, dangerous, and almost tyrannical empire. We know that they are launching a conquest into Heathmore. There is absolutely no reason for us to say, oh, but they're the poor, innocent people who were bullied by Horkos. Astria won't be oppressing or bullying some small empire or peaceful sultanate. She'll be picking a fight with a powerful, vengeful, and ambitious beast. And that is a recipe for incredible opportunities. The Wu Lin could lash back with tremendous force, counterattack, and begin a new invasion into Heathmore. And as Astria launches her invasion, a hero may rise up from the Wu Lin, not unlike Lu Bu, Liu Bei, or Cao Cao, a general to rally the Wu Lin and finally deliver Horkos a meaningful loss, something to upset the status quo. And in doing so, Gao Lei, the emperor, becomes arrogant and begins pushing further into Heathmore. The Outlanders, seeing the state of Heathmore and the threat that the Wu Lin are, may rise up to defend Heathmore. Ancient warriors who long knew peace will stand against an empire that grew into a massive and destructive force due to desperation. Or, heck, perhaps the opposite may be true. What if the Outlanders, who know the pain that Horkos has inflicted, sympathize with the Wu Lin and decide to lend their aid to the Chinese warriors? The Wu Lin and the Outlanders make an alliance that challenges Horkos, and Astria can't fight it alone, so she must call upon Griffin, or perhaps the three original factions, just to aid her and prevent a full Wu Lin and Outlander takeover. As you can see, the Wu Lin are a near endless source of heroes, lore, events, and cosmetics. From famous epics like the Journey to the West to the various ancient artworks and stylizations of the various Chinese dynasties, the culture of ancient China is a treasure trove of ideas and inspiration that For Honor has yet to even begin to delve into. The 5 warriors we have and the 2 maps available simply aren't enough for me, and I feel like if we take the time to think on it, as I have, you'll discover what I have, that the Wu Lin could be one of the potential keys to revitalizing For Honor. If the developers delve into that treasure trove, build maps, add heroes, and create whole new legends and events in For Honor featuring the Wu Lin and what China offers, you could have a whole year worth of content right there. Don't believe me? Watch this. Alright, idea for a whole year, just based on the Wu Lin. Call the year Heaven's Mandate, because that's the name that the Chinese used for whenever a imperial dynasty was reaching the end of its life. Basically, they believed that the gods, or heaven itself, would decree when a dynasty needed to fall by causing disasters, wars, famine, stuff like that. And so we call this year Heaven's Mandate, because it's time for a dynasty to fall, right? Okay, now, in this year, we're going to have 2 new heroes, we're going to have 4 new hero skins, we're going to have 2 new maps, it's going to be awesome. Alright, have the first season be about how the Emperor Gao Lei makes a power grab into Valkenheim. Introduce a Viking hero skin who attempts to slow their progress, and so he calls on Horkos' assistance. We'll say that it's a warlord hero skin. But Astria fails to show as she saves her own skin to get out of the way of this vicious dragon. She doesn't want to fight a war that she knows she can't win. We'll call this season Ambition, as it reveals the ambitious nature of Gao Lei and the Wu Lin, and we'll also release a brand new Wu Lin map, which will be the initial invasion point. Alright? Next, Season 2. The Wu Lin have marched into the mire after conquering Valkenheim. They, the samurai, have laid out traps and are giving the Wu Lin a hard time. They have a hero skin warrior, likely a shinobi or orochi, a special samurai or ninja fighter who manages to launch hit-and-run tactics that he mastered from observing the ocelotl. The Wu Lin supply lines are getting cut and the Vikings are starting to retake settlements, so things aren't looking good for the Wu Lin until Gao Lei reveals one of his secret warrior groups, the Liu Xing, or the Meteors. They fight with twin meteor hammer maces and are classified as heavy fighters. They smash through the samurai defenses and traps. They use unrivaled, near unstoppable force that even challenge the Shugoki Guard, and the season will be called Ravaged Hope. Then, the third season comes along. Now, this is the Halloween season, so we want to make sure things are creepy, but we're going to take a brief break from the fighting as an assassination attempt has been made on Gao Lei from a peacekeeper who will probably get her own hero skin. We'll give her the hero skin for that one. She is unsuccessful in killing the Emperor, but the Emperor has now been shocked by this attack. It scared him. The attempt on his life forces the Wu Lin on the back foot. The factions are using this time to rally and plan a counterattack, but to buy them time, and because Gao Lei is overreaching now because he's scared, the Wu Lin launch a surprise of their own. They use a demonic curse from their homeland upon their own dead warriors, turning them into Jiangshi, or hopping vampires. And this will create the Halloween event, in which it's like a survival game mode against scores of hopping vampires. While this is going on, the knights, samurai, and Viking are pursuing options when a centurion arrives with a solution. This season shall be called Realm of Monsters, and you can also add like a new map, maybe a new Breach mode map or a Dominion map where the minions are replaced with Jiangshi or something like that. Or maybe you have like officers hopping around as hopping vampires, and if they hit you it takes half your health. Like, there could be a lot of ideas there. And then finally in Season 4, the Centurion will reveal ancient technology and siege engines of the Roman Empire, and we'll call this season Lost Empire or Will of Heaven. One of those. I like both of those. He will reveal engines of the Roman Empire, thought lost to time, but in truth hidden away. He shall gain the hero skin of the season and shall offer these weapons to the knights in their attempt to fight back against the Wu Lin. Gao Lei is still recovering from the assassination attempt, but he demands that the Wu Lin continue fighting and prevent this Roman enemy from conflicting with them. So now we have these massive siege engines of the Romans coming up to bear on Gao Lei, pushing them all the way back to Chang Pass. But the thing is, the Wu Lin are getting sick of this. The Wu Lin are getting tired of Gao Lei's war hunger. They're getting tired of all the loss and death. They feel like he's gone too far. So a new Wu Lin rises up to the challenge and takes over and says, no, I'm going to challenge Gao Lei. And he assists the Heathmoor warriors in bringing him down. This warrior will be the second hero of the year. His warriors will be known as the Long Wu, or Dragon Warriors. They fight with Jian's sword, and they will be of the hybrid class. And at the end of the season, Gao Lei will be executed, and the leader of the Long Wu will become the new Wu Lin Emperor. And he will start by trying to attempt peaceful negotiations until Astria returns to ruin all that in the next year. Want to know something funny about all that? Want to know something funny about that whole idea? I came up with all that in one afternoon of thinking. I literally didn't spend more than an afternoon thinking on that. Now, I know it has faults and problems, but I find that the idea is already very intriguing, and this isn't just because I don't sit here all the time thinking of this kind of stuff. I just thought about what the Wu Lin could provide. You don't need to go far, you don't need to run across the world to other lands to grab new warriors, not when there's still one huge potential trove of treasure right in front of you. There is a sleeping dragon to the east of Heathmoor that has yet to be woken up. It's time for For Honor to do that. It's time for Honor to wake up this dragon and see just what it can do to change the state of the game. People often say that space is the final frontier, and yet we still have barely tapped the resources of the ocean, and that's what I see this as here. We keep jumping to the Aztecs, the Egyptians, and the Arabians, which is fine. I'm not saying those are bad to add. But we have skipped a massive potential treasure trove of information and ideas. I'm not saying we have to build a whole year built around the Wu Lin. I'm not saying we have to do that. But I only bring up that year idea because it proves that you can build a lot with just a little bit of knowledge about the Wu Lin. There's a lot you could see there. And yes, people are going to hit me in the comments saying there are holes in your idea, there are some flaws, and I'm sure we could work those out. We could iron out those details. All I'm saying is, with a little bit of time and a little bit of thought, There's a lot you could do with the Wu Lin. There's a lot you could take from China. There's a lot that could make this game very, very fun just by tapping into the well that is Chinese culture and history. Thank you guys very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Take care.